Yeah, I need to talk to my spouse before we set anything up. Is this an objection that rattles your call center, canvassing team, special events team, or retail lead generators? Well, you're not alone. A lot of us get this objection at the end, and there's a couple of things to consider when we're going to handle the I need to talk to my spouse first. Now, the first thing I need you to understand is that that may not be the real reason that the customer is not setting an appointment. Now, it's the plausible, easy excuse that they think they can get away with giving us and that we will accept. So you will hear that often when that may not be the actual real objection. So we're going to ask a simple question. If you've been on any of my other trainings, we talk about the power of the secondary question, which is that, when human beings are in buying resistance and they are afraid to be sold something, they will make up a lot of reasons to get out of doing something, right? And so what we find is the power of the secondary question is a question that they are not prepared with an answer or a lie for. So oftentimes, we can ask a secondary question, and because they don't have their story prepared because they're not expecting it, it sort of forces them to come off of information that they weren't trying to reveal or that they would not otherwise tell us. So what we want to say, first of all, anytime someone says they have to talk to their spouse, don't argue with them. The last thing you should be doing is trying to convince them they don't need to talk to their spouse. That is going to go over poorly, my friends. Yes, you could go ahead and try to set a tentative appointment. Like that's what a lot of companies default to because they just don't know how to handle this. But a way better way to handle this would say, oh, absolutely. And we want you to talk to your husband or wife for sure. Let me ask you, what do you think they're going to say? And wait and shut up and let them fill the silence. One of two answers will normally come out. Number one will be, well, I think they'll say that we're not doing anything right now, but, maybe we'll do something down the road. Okay. Well, then the spouse wasn't the objection. That's the real objection. The person you're in front of is actually the one that's saying no, but they're blaming it on the spouse because the spouse isn't here or they're not in the room, right? The person who's not in the room always gets blamed. So I want you to understand, first of all, if we say to them, what do you think they'll say? Sometimes the real objection comes out, which is, we're not going to do this right now. It's much easier to overcome a stall than it is to overcome the spousal objection. So if we can bring that back to the fact that it's actually a stall and not a spousal objection, then we'll have better success. The second thing that they may say when you say, well, sure, we want you to talk to them, what do you think they're going to say? The other thing that will come out is they'll say, I don't really know. Oh, okay, I understand. Well, when you do talk to them, what we have found is that conversation is usually going to go one of two ways. The first way it'll go is you'll go to your husband or wife and ask their permission to get the information you guys have already agreed you're going to need at some point anyway. Or you can go to your spouse and say, honey, I took the first step in getting our problem solved when it comes to our bathroom by agreeing to get some free information. Now, you don't think your spouse would be against just getting some free information, do you? And then shut up. That's called taking it to no. At the end, we're using the Chris Voss technique where the customer, it's much easier for them to give us a no than it is for them to give us a yes. So if I can ask them a question, you wouldn't be against, or your spouse wouldn't be against getting some free information, would they? The answer no comes out pretty easily, but no actually means yes for us in that context. So, we definitely want to walk the customer through that, right? If you want to have any sort of, success with overcoming the spousal objection, like those are two techniques that you can use at the end. However, the deeper thing is, if they're giving you a stall at the end, if they're giving you a push off for the spouse at the end, the real question you need to ask yourself is, do they really actually even want the appointment to begin with? Because to be fair, people make time for that which is a priority and is important in their lives. People make excuses for that which is not. So you have to ask yourself, well, did I get enough urgency for the project established? Because the answer might be no, and then no amount of objection handling at the end is going to help you. Did I get enough pain points to where the customer is like, yeah, now that you mention it, it has been a long time since we've been thinking about this or looking into this. And so, yeah, I guess we should just go ahead and see what it costs, right? if they don't have a level of urgency around the project, you can try to force them into an appointment all day long. But even if they set to get you off the porch or to get you off the phone, they're just going to cancel anyway. So we need to make sure that we're getting to the emotional pain points by asking open-ended questions during a need uncovering step. That is going to help us with getting less objections at the end. See, a lot of times companies will try to just handle objections at the end of the process, when had we handled those objections early on by being a problem solver of someone's problem, not being a pushy salesperson, if you will, we would have had less objections to begin with. So it's just really important for us to see this for what it is, and that is that we have to make sure we have enough urgency established, and that if they do use the spousal objection at the end, that we have a couple techniques as to how to handle it. Question-based objection handling is always best. What do you think they're going to say? And make sure you get the customer to start talking about that a little. So yeah, have a great day, guys.